IB Langlet Oral, Part 2. Today's agenda, figure out what I put here. I can make 10 bullet points. I've got a non-literary extract that I feel is pretty awesome and is going to fit with a pretty cool global issue. And I have got a literary extract that I feel is pretty awesome and is going to fit very well with the global issue. But I don't know exactly what my global issue is. I don't know exactly what authorial choices I'm going to be focusing on. And I need to see how all three of those things fit together. So here is where we are right now. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit and explain how these things work together. So, global issue. I know that I want to do something that has to do with the global pandemic and adaptations to the global pandemic. In fact, that could be the global issue right there. Adaptations to the global pandemic is definitely a global issue. Because what are our global issues? What are our options when it comes to global issues? Well, here they are. What works as a global issue? It works as a global issue if it has transnational significance, if it has a local impact as well. And it can be a broad range. I mean, IB really wants you to find something that resonates with you, with what you care about, what matters to you. So it could be something related to culture, identity, community. That would include things like family, like different cultural groups inside and outside of different power structures, identity development, and how identity is related to anything like class, religion, culture, economic status, level of technology, past, present, future, all that kind of stuff. Beliefs, values, education, which includes anything related to religion or anything related to different levels or opportunities, and these things interact as well. So you could have a global issue. It's they're not like real strict categories. So you could have an interaction between religion and identity, or here's politics and power. I thought of a good one: uses of deception in politics, or uses of deception in maintaining political power. Yeah, that's all over. I mean, that's all over your works that you're reading, I would hope, and all the way from ancient Greece to today. Science, technology, and environment, anything related to climate change, skepticism about science, scientific breakthroughs, how culture adapts to science, anything there. Art and creativity, and this is where it gets really wide, because you can basically have how do artists depict, any aspect of human experience, emotional, physical, cultural, and so your oral becomes about, well, what are the tools that different writers use? And remember, once you establish your global issue, ultimately, you want to arrive at two different conclusions based on your two different works. And so here is your literary work, here's your non-literary work, or your non-literary body of work. So this could be a visual text. It could be a movie. It could be an advertising campaign. It could be a photograph. So these are your non-visual texts. So you need to think about authorial choices in that text and how that global issue ultimately is presented to the audience of that text. And you'll come to some kind of conclusion. For your literary text, it's exactly the same. But the conclusion is going to be very different. The authorial choices are different, and ultimately how it's presented is going to be subtly different. They could be totally different. They could be somewhat similar. They could be any range of difference between how they're presented. So let's get right into it. I'm going to move. We have a lot of ground to cover, so I will move quickly. And I'm going to start with my literary text. My literary text is written by Zadie Smith, and I have thought about all the things I'm looking for. So your first step is you are looking, you are open to different possibilities for authors' choices that are large or small, but most importantly, how do they impact that global issue? And so at this point, really all I need for my global issue is just a vague outline. I don't have like a real fully defined global issue, so I'm just going to write over here pandemic. I'm going to call it the global pandemic. And As I said, my global issue could be as simple as responses to the global pandemic, or it might be a little bit more carefully defined, or a little bit more closely defined based on what choices I find. I really can't determine exactly what my global issue is going to be until I have got some clarity as far as what author's choices have the most impact, because ultimately that is what my entire oral is about. So when it comes to literary works, I'm open to the idea that it could be something have to do with the form or the genre. This happens to be a personal essay that she wrote in direct response to the pandemic that's contained in a wonderful, wonderful book, Intimations, that was just released in 2020. So that's possible. You also have, you're looking for metaphor, symbol, do they relate? Point of view, is that significant? What about style and tone? What about irony? What about voice and register, characterization, emotional connotations, clarity, ambiguity, figurative language in any of its forms, choice of details, imagery, or almost an infinity of other possible choices. There are really specific rhetorical devices that could be used. Things like anaphora. If you don't know what anaphora is, it doesn't mean that you are not an excellent reader. And it doesn't mean that if you describe something and you use the phrase repetition rather than more technically it's known as anaphora, that you're going to get a bad score on your oral. What's most important for the oral is meaning. I would almost say it's like meaning and energy. That you have energy that you're taking into this examination. You're looking for that global issue, and you're looking for the choices that you feel are most important in framing, presenting that particular global issue. And so if you can describe what something means, and the exact literary term for it is either eluding you, or it's just maybe not really well defined. Maybe it's like, well, this character in this moment made this decision, and because this character made this decision, broadly that's that's characterization or character choices. That doesn't really have a very technical name for it, but if you can talk about in that moment the impact on the reader and how it frames the global issue a certain particular way, that's valuable. So I'm going to read this. I'm going to actually do this work. I haven't done this before. I don't know what my my authorial choices are right now, but I want to read this and see if I can find them. Looking for how is the global pandemic presented? How is it presented in this extract right here? I know that this extract deals with it. How is it presented, and what are those choices that have the most impact? So I'm going to annotate this as I read it, and I'll see where I end up. I honestly don't know where that is right now. The misery is very precisely designed and different for each person, and if you didn't know better, you'd say the gods of comedy and tragedy had a hand in it. The single human in the city apartment thinks, I have never known such loneliness. The married human in the country place with partner and children dreams of isolation within isolation. All the artists with children who treasured isolation as the most precious thing they owned find out what it is to live without privacy and without time. The writer learns how not to write, the actor not to act, the painter how never to see her studio, and so on. So that's an authorial choice right there. That's a parallel structure in creating those three sentences. So that's a candidate. The artists without children are delighted by all the free time for a time, until time itself begins to take on an accusatory look. That's a personification of time, which is interesting. And so what's my global issue? It's dealing with the pandemic, maybe. Responses to the global pandemic. Time itself begins to take on. So I'm going to just keep track of these right here, because this first one we would call parallelism, which I don't know if I spelled that right. And then here we have a personification. Because the fact is, it is hard to fill all this time sufficiently, given the sufferings of others. There's something going on here. I don't know what it is. Given the sufferings of others. Well, the title of this piece is Suffering Like Mel Gibson. And so here we have misery, we have the married human. What an interesting phrase. So that is, that's a diction. That's a choice in diction. The married human. She could have said married people, but she said married human. So that's like, what are you noticing as you read? Things that strike you. Things that strike you as worth noticing. And then later we'll think about their meaning and how they impact meaning, and what you might name them. I would say that is a simple choice in diction. It's only one sentence, so it's definitely small. Remember, we're looking for author's choices, large and small. Given the sufferings of others. And besides, now there is no clocking off ever, and no drowning of artistic anxiety in a party or conversation or frantic exercise. Married men are confronted with the infinite reality of their wives. That's a great phrase. I love that phrase. The infinite reality of their wives. I don't know what it means. I mean, I know what it means. I don't know how it will fit into my oral at this point, or if it will at all, but I do love that. And so that's what I'm noticing. Who cannot now be exchanged, even mentally, for a strange girl walking down the street. So this is very much a mental game. That's the effect. That's what she's examining. She's examining these mental aspects. And so that maybe, remember, that as I'm doing I'm trying to answer a question. As I move through here, I'm trying to answer a very specific question, and maybe this gets me, maybe it's not the authorial choice that is going to make its way into my oral. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But right here, this might give me a sense of what my answer to the question is. And the question is, how is it presented in this extract? And what I thought of when I was there was like, it's a mental game. This suffering, this examination of suffering is a mental exercise. Even mentally, for a strange girl walking down the street, her face, her face, her face. There's a very powerful repetition. Oh, and she does it twice. So this is distinctive. This, I'm imagining, and I really am doing this for the first time, I promise. It's not the first time I've read this, but it is the first time I've thought about this. Look at this. I'm doing two outlines. I've got it in purple. I've got it in red. Her face, her face, her face. Your face, your face, your face. Because that's unusual. It's unexpected. It is idiosyncratic. Zadie Smith is such a great writer. And she's really raw here. Wow, is she raw. The only relief is two faces facing forwards. Faces facing forwards. Is that alliteration worth, discussing? Maybe. New lovers for the first time wonder about love. Is love enough? Wow. Perhaps a dog should be added to this endless pas de deux. Or some other living creature. Young people hunger for the touch of strangers, of anyone. Club kids go to bed at 9. Older people, surrounded by generations of family, dream of exactly the same empty couch that is elsewhere, right now, at this very moment, the purest torture for some lucky, desperate, fortunate, lonely, selfish, enviable, self-indulgent, privileged, bereft student. Married divorce lawyers go to war over who will work when. So this sentence is quite long. So what is that? That's syntax. That is contrasting syntax. Those are authorial choices, and they impact meaning. So here I have a menu of choices to choose from. And what's my global issue? Right now it's the global pandemic. How is it presented in this extract? Well, maybe some kind of the mental, it's really about social isolation, and it's also how different it is for different people. So it's really I think that's enough that I'm going to do for right now for this. Eventually, this is going to turn into bullet points. This is going to turn to bullet points, but I have enough because I don't need to examine, 50 different authorial choices. If I'm really going to explain the impact of them, I can probably only do it, maybe 2, maybe 3. I'm going to move on to the visual text now. So, moving on to the visual text, what possible things am I looking for in this visual text? I'm gonna put this post-it note up and then I'm gonna zoom out. This post-it note are the things I might be looking for as I look through this non-literary work. The artist for this, his name is Richard McGuire. His body of work includes many New Yorker covers and also short stories and a graphic novel that everyone should read that's called Here. Non-literary work, body of work, authors, choices large and small. Composition. This is particularly if you're looking at an advertisement or something that has a balance between images and texts. Where is the text? Is it the top, at the bottom, at the side? Is it very big? Is it very small? The image, is it a single image or is it some kind of a tableau of different images? All of those things are composition. And the question is how does it impact this global, the global issue, which mine happens to be the pandemic? Color. Colors and what they represent. If I was going to describe the colors in this, they're kind of washed out. They look like crayons, They look like crayons, and what does that mean? Well, during the pandemic, maybe you just work with whatever you have around you, so you use your classic crayons to kind of create something. Is that what Richard McGuire intended? Is that what Richard McGuire wants everyone to think? I don't know, probably not, but that's what I think. And so that's my work as an interpreter of text, as an interpreter of this visual text. I can say that. I can say that this is what the color represents in this work to me, and that's the author's choice that I feel is significant in framing the global issue in such a way that, in a global pandemic, you do work with whatever you have because maybe going to the store to get the high-quality colors is dangerous. Arrangement and juxtaposition of images is where are things placed in relation to other things. So here we have, now this is upside down. Let me get through all of these. But so you'd say, well, here's a car on the street that's upside down. What's it near? Juxtaposition is where a meaning can come from the relation of different objects or images in a visual work. Visual metaphors and symbols, the same way they operate in literary texts, is metaphors. What could it mean? What's the significance? For example, what's the significance of that? That's a mask. Does it mean something outside of that? Anything. Visually, you can look at anything and say it means something. Like, what is that? What does that mean? What does it symbolize? What is this above his head? It means something. The degree of realism and abstraction is something that's important. So he could have drawn these characters to look exactly like human beings look. Instead, he went for a very, he went for just a cartoon. So the degree to which something is cartoonified, don't use that word, cartoonified, abstracted, or is it very realistic? The subject. Is the subject in the background, the foreground? Is there a background? Is there a subject complex? Is it easy to discern what the subject is? The foreground and background. Texture, space, and scale. What's the texture of this image? It's very flat. It's supposed to be a three-dimensional image, but it's like it wasn't well executed. So what does that mean for the global issue? If I'm seeing that this is the pandemic and maybe emotional responses to the pandemic, maybe that's the direction I go in. Maybe surviving the pandemic, Texture, space, and scale. Weight to lines and or text. So if there is text, is it very heavy? Is it, what's the level of emphasis? And the lines, this is extremely geometrical and very mathematical in the way that the lines, so how could that have a possible significance with relation to the global issue? Well, people are put into boxes and compartments, and it's very You feel very distant from everything, you know. So you might start with like, how does this make me feel? How does this image make me feel? And then you look into the image and find out, why does it make me feel that way? It's actually easier in some respects than doing a literary analysis, because you have to have syntax and verbs and nouns, and you have to know how to read sentences and all that. But like when you look at an image, you just feel a certain way. Visual allusions, same thing. A visual allusion to another work, to a larger, like a historical work, style and tone. And then pastiche is how different objects are combined. So now I'm going to do a reading of this image, which I can't capture the whole thing at the same time. So let me get this out of the way. And this is a magazine cover. So form matters here too. Genre. This is a magazine cover. That is the title of the magazine at the top. So what's the relationship between the title of the magazine and this upside down image? So point of view. Obviously, what I need to talk about is the fact that this image is upside down. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the geometric fragmentation. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the, so when it comes to images, you just kind of start talking and you're like, oh, I can see. So he chose this upside down image. It makes you feel like you're like the viewer is not safe. Like, how could you ever see something like this upside down? You'd have to be leaning out your apartment window upside down to see something like this. And that's a very precarious, dangerous. So what's the impression? So what does this do? This is trying to give you, like, Zadie Smith's work might be very cerebral. So now I'm thinking that now that I have done some thinking and I've mentioned some things that are worth thinking about, it's like, okay, so if Zadie Smith's work is like, is quite cerebral, it's looking at defining suffering, really define the suffering. Maybe this is designed more for emotional impact, more for a visceral emotional impact that duplicates or replicates or creates the impression of living in the pandemic. This is thinking about the pandemic. This is experiencing the pandemic as a possibility, And then I choose my choices, and I think that's going to be it for this video because it's 22 minutes. And for my next video, I think I'll just maybe present my bullet points. I'll present my bullet points after I've made some decisions about these things. And then the next video after that will be the oral. I'll just do an oral. Maybe I'll even ask myself questions for 5 minutes, and then people have asked for this. I don't know. Let me know if you think it'd be valuable to you. If you've watched all the way to the end, you will get what you want. Let me know, and if I get some comments that ask for for me to score my own oral, I'm going to try to do the best job I can. So if you ask for that, I'll see what I can do. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a great day.